America for those who have been the beneficiaries of this system. Congressman Shomari Figures from the great state of Alabama. Thank you for joining me on the record today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. I'm glad the timing of this interview because we saw President Trump on the Hill trying to rally GOP behind this big, beautiful bill. And one thing he said over and over, which we've heard before, he said, we're not cutting Medicaid, we're not cutting waste, we're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. We're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. But I wanted to talk to you because Alabama is a state that we know will be caught up is in many other states in what the effect that this bill has. Talk about what it does and what is deeper that we're not seeing when it comes to this big, beautiful bill that he's trying to push forward.
Well, for one, it's big, but it's not beautiful. It's certainly not beautiful for the people in the state of Alabama, certainly not in District 2 that I have the privilege of representing. I represent one of the poorest economic districts in the country, unfortunately. And I mean, this is a state where the individual median income is amongst the lowest in the country, just north of $30,000 for the individual median income in my district, in my state. And so, you know, these are people who need government to be there for them in ways that it has historically been there. And benefits like SNAP, things like Medicaid, these are benefits that people rely on in my district disproportionately at disproportionately high numbers. About 1 in 4 households in my district participate in the SNAP program. About 1 in 4 households, or 1 in 4 people rather, in my district are Medicaid enrollees. And so, you know, when we have a bill that's going to threaten those very programs at the core, all to just give tax benefits, more tax benefits to the wealthiest of Americans, primarily the billionaires, of which we only have 1 in the state of Alabama.
Ooh.
And so, you know, it's problematic and it's going to hit real people in real ways in my district.
I just want to throw out some real numbers. The bill adds $3.3 trillion to the debt, cuts over $700 billion from Medicaid. You were talking about that, while giving the richest Americans, the top 5%, a tax cut of $250,000. In addition to that, we even have Moody's coming out and talking about downgrading even the credit of America. What do you, I know you are teaming up with Families Over Billionaires. What is the messaging that you all have coming out of this?
Look, I think the messaging with organizations like this one and organizations across the country and the Democratic caucus as a whole is the same, is that, you know, we shouldn't be here providing more benefits for the wealthy at the expense of the people who need it most, right? And I think that's a pretty simple, straightforward message that rings true and resonates with a lot of people, because at the end of the day, you know, when you come from a place like mine where we struggle with things as basic as keeping hospitals open in communities across my district. I mean, my district is one of the worst healthcare outcome districts in the country. We have 22 hospitals, rural hospitals in the state of Alabama that are at immediate risk of closing, of which several of those are located in my district. And so that's the environment that we're talking about. And when you talk about giving tax breaks to billionaires while, you know, pulling back on the $6 a day, which is the average SNAP benefit that poor people get in this country, you know, that's problematic and it's tough. And so that's the messaging that we're pushing, just making people understand like how this really resonates and hits real people while providing benefits to the wealthiest people in this country.
So what do you tell your constituents? Because this bill could go through, right? We know after this, the Senate gets it, they could cut it up. But at the end of the day, you still have a community of people that could be on the outs, not just also where, I mean, hadn't even talked yet about, you know, rural residents and farmers, what that'll happen, the effect of that to all Americans when we see this. What are you telling them?
So we tell them how it is, right? We shoot it straight with them and we let them know what this bill is going to do, what this bill is not going to do. And what we have seen clearly is that this bill benefits a certain segment of the population at the expense of others. And similar with other actions of this administration, it's a bill that's you know, was rushed through. It's something that was done without the requisite conversations and planning and committee work that should have been done, without the pushback that you've seen from myself and other members of the Democratic caucus and outside organizations as well. A lot of the negative impacts of this bill would not have been highlighted in the way that they have been. And we've seen some success with that. Their first time trying to push this through the budget committee, which is another step in this process, it failed. Came back and they only passed it by 1 vote. And so, this bill has some substantial problems with it, some significant issues, and ones that we are seeking to highlight. And I think that we're effectively highlighting to this point. And I think we'll continue to have more success, as well as putting the pressure on the Senate. We've already seen members of the Senate speak out against this bill on both sides of the aisle, and we expect that to continue.
I was going to ask you about that. What do you think will happen once this does get to the Senate, just real outcomes? What do you think will happen?
It's my hope that it would not pass the Senate, and I think we've seen enough opposition to it. I think the reality is, look, the American people are not stupid, right? They understand numbers, they understand math. And the math of this bill tells us that it's no way for them to try to save the type of money that they are claiming that they are saving, when in essence, it's, in reality, it's not savings, because you're adding more money to the debt.
Right.
But there's no way to get to the number that they want without touching Medicaid. It's impossible.
Right, which they keep saying and going back and saying that they're not going to do. And that's why we have people all over in town halls speaking up and speaking out. Are you also planning for how to help and support your constituents in the situation where the bill does go through? What are some things that you're planning or talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the unfortunate event that this bill does happen, we have to do everything that we can to continue to educate people about what benefits are still out there. We have to work with as many organizations as we possibly can to stand in where they have the capacity to do so, to provide food to the hungry. We have to make sure that we're continuing to push and fight every single day here in Washington, D.C. to restore those benefits. We have another budget fight coming up at the end of the current fiscal year in September, so we'll be at it again to make sure that we're prioritizing the people who need to be prioritized the most, and that's not the billionaires of the world. It is literally the average, everyday working man and woman and the children of District 2 in my home state of Alabama.
You've been in office for 100 plus.
110 days or so.
110.
20 days.
110 days. And you are coming in at such a time when there is so much division, right? And there's so much on the line for all of America. Literally, this could set us back, depending upon what happens in this bill, for generations. And that's what many analysts have been saying. Did you think that you would be coming into something like this when you were running?
Unfortunately, yes, I did. I had the privilege to work in Congress before I was elected. And, that happened to correspond with the first 3 years of the last Trump administration. And so, I had sort of seen parts of this song and dance in the past. But at the end of the day, we knew we were coming into a Trump administration. We knew that he would be bringing with him a level of vengeance and vindictiveness, coming back into the White House. And so we knew we had to guard against some things. And one thing about Donald Trump is that if you can imagine the worst outcome, he's likely going to at least entertain that option, if not, pursue that option. And so we knew things could be rough. And so we spent time preparing, going around the district, finding out, what people need, what people are saying, what people are thinking, what they're scared of, to prepare, for this moment. And unfortunately, we're in a place now where, it's a couple steps closer to becoming reality, but we haven't given up the fight. And I think we're going to win this one when it's all said and done.
Lastly, to Americans who'll be watching this, that you just went down the list. They're scared, they're fearful, they're not sure what's going to happen. This literally could be life and death for some, especially when it comes to healthcare, how that's going to be effective for veterans, for those who could become homeless. What is it that you want to say to Americans to give them a bit of hope as you go through this process?
Just know that we're fighting for you every single day. I often ask the question, like, why are you here? What are you doing this for? For me, it's people like you. It's people that grew up in the neighborhoods that I grew up in Toulminville, and cities like Mobile and Montgomery and Tuskegee and Troy, Alabama, and Phoenix City and other places. At the end of the day, you guys are the reason I'm here. You guys are the reason that I do what I do. And I know I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for hundreds of members in this body, especially on the Democratic side, who bring those everyday American values here to stand up for real people who look like you. People who didn't grow up rich, people who didn't come from generational wealth, people who don't know what tomorrow holds, people who live paycheck to paycheck, people who don't have life savings or rich parents that they can rely on for their future. That's why we're here, to make sure that we're taking care of people like you and make sure that this country reflects the values of who we are as core Americans to our core, to make sure we reflect those values in the policies and laws that we push here every single day.
Representative Figures, thank you so much for coming on the record with
you.
AURN. I hope that we can talk to you again.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll see each other again as we're bumping into the hallways to figure out what's going to happen with this bill. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.